I hate the cold so much.
Boop. Outtake.
Welcome to the Lost in Transition podcast. I'm your host, Chris Gerard. Derek Tingle.
I'm Derek Tingle.
He's here.
I'm here. Hi.
Lana Burrell is off this week, ditching us for the sunny, dry California weather.
Which I'm not thrilled about.
It is nasty out. We both hate winter so much. Hopefully the weather's nice where you're at, or will be nice by the time that you listen to us. And
hopefully it'll be nice here by the time you listen to us.
Oh, yeah, that would be nice too. Right now, I think we're recording this Wednesday the 7th, so it's supposed to be bitterly cold for the next couple days, at least as far as we're concerned here in our soft part of the world in East Tennessee. My relatives up north have 2 or 3 inches of snow on the ground.
Well,
so
that's their fault for living up north.
Well, yeah, obviously. It goes without saying. That's why I'm down here. You can take us out on that long run or long bike if you have enough thermal underwear and all that good stuff. iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, the TuneIn Radio app, YouTube, and Facebook are all places that you can get that show audio. Like, there's almost too many places to get it now.
There's never too many places.
We will mail a CD to your house.
Absolutely. I'll even sign it.
Yeah, I know. We do charge for that.
An autographed CD of the Lost in Transition podcast.
I might have a cassette somewhere even. No 8 tracks, though.
No 8 tracks.
The website is losttransition.com. Facebook and Twitter have our social media updates. And let us know who you'd like to hear on some upcoming shows. Tonight we're talking to Al Dockery of SwimBikeStumble. A lot of y'all might know Al's blog. He's had it out there for, I want to say, 4 or 5 years now. It's been around for quite a while. And those of you listening kind of in the East Tennessee, Appalachia area might know Al from living in Morristown here a few years ago. He's back in upstate South Carolina. I want to call it North South Carolina, but
North
people
South
really
Carolina.
just like look at me cross-eyed when I say that.
It looks a lot better on paper.
It does. It does, for sure. So looking forward to talking to him tonight.
Great blog, too. If you've not gone there, it's truly, there's some really funny stuff.
We were laughing out loud as we were prepping some of the show, for sure. And thanks for the feedback last week on the first of 3 podcasts that we're going to be doing about planning
3.
the 2018 triathlon season. So last time, if you missed it, go back in the archive. It's there. We were talking about kind of laying out 2018, getting some plans, how to pick the races. And then next week, we will be looking into more of an individual race and how to specifically prepare for the intricacies of an individual race, because let's face it, no 2 triathlons are the same.
Right.
And they take a little bit different goal setting and preparation. And then we're going to wrap it up toward the end of the month with a kind of how to recap after a race and take some of that information that you learned and make it useful and apply it to future races and kind of,
because let's face it, you can only read so many race reports that are the exact same
exactly
thing. We all know you swam, we all know you biked, and we all know you ran, and we all know that at some point it sucked. But
we all know you pooped beforehand, and congratulations on that. You're obviously grown up now.
That seems to be a topic of much discussion among triathletes. It's quite important, though.
It is quite important. You don't realize how important
arguably
it
the
is.
most important thing that you will do before a race.
Before a race, it's number 1 prep item right there.
Let's
for
go ahead
sure.
and throw this. If you have any poop related stories or
send them to
rituals, feel free to post those up if you'd like those brought up on a triathlon.
Yeah, we'll just say Derek at Lost Transition. We need to make you an email address.
We do.
No one can
send
send
me hate mail.
I know, right? Yeah, now that we're bringing you on, I want to make you responsible for all the stupid stuff you spit out of your mouth from time to time.
Sorry, I had a lot of coffee today. I can't be responsible for what I say.
Coffee's a wonderful thing. So Al Dockery coming up next on the show, and then our other shows coming up here in March as well. Also talking with Susan Lakey coming up in the next couple of weeks. She is a writer for Triathlete Magazine and Competitor.com and several other... What? Title
of her book.
Life's Too Short.
The title of the book.
Life's Too Short to Go So. Well, it's effing slow in the title because there's an asterisk, so I guess that's the proper way to say it. I don't know.
I think she means flopping.
Obviously.
Flopping.
Flocking.
Flocking.
So we'll be talking to Susan coming up here in a couple of weeks as well. Interested to hear a little bit more of her story. It sounds like quite an interesting one. So pay attention to that. And for your podcast feed, subscribe, rate and review too, if you would. Just helps us reach more people out there. So we get a little bit of payback. We're obviously not getting rich for spending our weekday nights doing this, but it is gratifying when people do say nice things about us, and or even constructively critical things about us. If you are going to start a flame war and say that we suck,
I'm going to come back.
We will come and haunt you.
We can argue on the internet with the best of them, don't worry.
Absolutely. Derek is ready to go for that one. All right, without further ado, Al Dockery next on the Lost in Transition podcast. Stay tuned. Al Dockery is an award-winning writer, triathlete, ultra runner, and the author of the blog SwimBikeStumble, providing inspiration, information, and a much-needed dose of humor for those making their endurance sports dreams come true. He joins us on the show today. Al, welcome to Lost in Transition.
Thank you, Chris.
So, looked a little bit on your blog about your journey into triathlon, and I believe it was back in 2009 when, as you put it, you couldn't run across a soccer field and knew it was time to make a change. What brought you to do triathlon as the vehicle for that change?
Well, it was a process. I started out seeing if I could run a mile, and then I figured if I could string 3 of those together, I could do a 5K. And then I did a 10K, and back in 95, I had done a sprint. And I realized I still had that 1994 Trek 470 in the garage. So I decided to get it out and go for it.
Nice. It sounds a lot like my foray into multi-sport and endurance sports. I'm a recovering fat guy also. 6-7 years ago, I weighed about 250 or so, and then kind of had that sobering moment and decided to make a lifestyle change and got into running and so on. Sounds a lot like your story. I noticed, I was kind of reading in some of your background there. You said you had a sobering conversation with a physician. That's, I know for me, I never had that conversation, but do you feel that, that was really the point where everything kicked off for you? That
really was the thing that ignited my desire to get back out and get some exercise. It did not go well, and it was not looking good for me. I had some things going on that, if they fully developed, were going to really impact my life.
Yeah, I understand that. I was fighting some things, that I didn't want to get to that point, and that was for me. It was that kind of sobering realization myself that, if I didn't do something about it, that I'd be having that difficult conversation at some point. So, well, good for you, man. I'm really proud to hear that you've done that. And you certainly made things interesting on the blog. And, I'm reading some of this and thinking that a lot of it's, things that I've thought myself. I got to ask you, how did you come up with the idea for SwimBikeStumble? And, obviously the name in itself is humorous and tells a lot about what's in the blog, but tell us a little bit about the formation of that idea and bringing that into fruition.
Well, starting out, I really just wanted to kind of chronicle my journey, because I was doing things in my late 40s and early 50s that I wouldn't have even thought about doing in my 30s. And at first it was just me writing about my wacky adventures, and then I kind of had a realization that the blog was about more than just me, and I wanted to reach out and provide some inspiration and some information that would be useful for everyone, but I really wanted to kind of target the people, my tribe, which I like to describe as the back-of-the-pack athletes. And part of how I decided to do that was to just, write about my experiences with a little bit of self-deprecating humor and kind of hold myself accountable. I talk openly about the struggle I've had with swim panic, and about my training mistakes, about race days that did not go well, and about some really bad ideas that I had that were holding me back. And I want people to read that and say, okay, if he did this and went through that, then I can too.
There's definitely a very identifiable everyman vibe there that people can kind of latch on to. You know, the sport is mostly made up of middle and back of the packers, and so there's a lot of very identifiable themes within that. Certainly, my open water story is very similar to yours in a lot of ways. I did love on the 7 signs that you might be bad at open water swimming. I think it was point number 2, how the Garmin file spelled out the word potato. Yeah. Is that based on a true story? Or is that a little bit of artistic license?
There's a little bit of artistic license. To be honest with you, the 7 signs, some of it is just my wacky sense of humor, but to be completely honest, about a third of those kind of start out with something that happened to me more or less. Like, I really was at Beach to Battleship, and a kayaker really did have to chase me down because I was headed dead north and completely oblivious to the turn buoy.
Heading, I think it was there,
Maryland,
yeah, headed for a totally different state. That's awesome.
I swam 1.4 miles because 1.2 just wasn't far enough.
There you go. Extra practice is always a good thing. That 7 signs series is something, it looks like probably 3 or 4 months ago that you started really doing a lot of. Is that a format that someone requested or that you just thought of? How did that get started? And are there any more kind of in the pipeline that you'd like to do?
There's an endless number of those that you can do, and you know, I have my own kind of surreal way of looking at the world, and sometimes things just pop into my head. And one day I decided that everything in life has 7 signs. So, you know, and they go from the subtle to the surreal, and you know, like your coworkers, 7 signs that you're not very popular with them, might start out with, they throw darts at your office door, and then it might turn out that they throw lawn darts at your office door, and then you may notice that they brought in a sharpening machine. So that's just how my wacky brain works.
Now, I did notice that I believe you're a physical therapy assistant in your day job. Have you been doing that your whole career? And how does that work with your training schedule?
I'm a midlife career changer. I've been a PTA now for 10 years. Before that, I was a writer and editor working in the trade press, covering mostly textiles and furniture. And sometimes I describe myself as a recovering writer. The blog and part is a vehicle for me to get back in writing and, just working with the words and making stories.
Well, I do have a question for you just on that, because myself, I enjoy writing, but I find it hard to just do it. Like, I find it hard to get started. Once I sit down and start writing, it seems to come decently easy for me. But, like, if you go to my blog, I think the last time I wrote something was, like, last year sometime. How do you find the motivation to just sit down and put those first words on the page?
Well, that's really kind of the tricky part of it. I often say that when you actually start putting words on the screen or putting words on the paper, you're 80% done, even though you're 3 words into it, because you've actually got there and started with the composing process. I have to think a lot and do a lot for the more serious stuff. I just kind of look around online in Facebook groups and maybe forums and see, what are people talking about? What do they seem to have questions about? And for the more whimsical posts, I just pick a part of triathlon or trail running or training and say, okay, how could this be funny? What about this would be, amusing? And, I try sometimes to work an animal or a pop culture reference into it just to kind of mix it up a little. But the trick is with a blog, I decided to take my blog more seriously. And the trick is you've got to be regular. People have got to know that they're going to get some content from you. So at least once a week, I put something up. And I try and put something up twice a week. And right now, I'm working on a series for new triathletes. I did How to Pick Your First Race. I just put up How to Train for Your First Race. And probably next week, I will be putting up Your First Race Day. Here's what you're going to do.
I like it, yeah. the first race day what you're going to do that you shouldn't do, or?
Yeah, I'm going to explain to them that they're going to go out too fast on the swim, they're going to go out too fast on the bike, and they're going to go out too fast on the run.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Very accurate.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's fun to read through your blog because, like you say, it's just, you know, the things that we've all either done or seen, and it just kind of brings back those sometimes painful and memories that we just kind of want to forget about. But so I gotta ask you too. I was reading through some of your stuff, and it says that you've done most every distance that we can think of here from running, and then mentions up to a half iron distance. But I gotta say, there's no Ironman on that list. Is that coming down the road for you sometime?
It's funny that you should mention that. My goal this year, I'm going to be doing Ironman Augusta for the second time.
Okay.
My goal is to dramatically increase my swim and bike speed so that I can see that it'll be possible to train for an Ironman next fall. Okay. And I'm looking at Chattanooga.
Nice. Chattanooga could be really nice, especially for the swim tended with the downriver swim. I know last year they had the dam flowing, and we had some pretty record swim times. I think you could just turn on your back and float and still make the cutoff without actually taking a single stroke. So, and of course it's a beautiful town. So, but yeah, good for you. Hopefully you'll be chronicling all that on the blog as you train through for the Ironman adventure there.
Yeah, I like to do race reports, and years ago, I was thinking about doing the Hammer Sprint, and I was looking for race reports because I like to vet my races, because sometimes I sign up for races that are over my head, and it makes for an interesting day, and I found this guy's race report, and all I can tell you from the report was he wasn't happy with his swim, he wasn't happy with his bike, and he wasn't happy with his run. And I realized that there just wasn't a lot of useful information for me there. And when I realized that, I changed the way I write my race reports. They're still about, you know, how I freak on the swim and how the bike doesn't go exactly the way I want, but I'm excited to see that finish line. But I also try and capture the vibe of the race and talk about the course and the pavement, the volunteers, how organized it is, and what you can do to kind of get ready for it. Kind of make it a little bit more helpful.
Yeah, informational. That's just something that I've definitely noticed missing in a lot of race reports. They are just, you know, either a victory lap if the day went really well, or a post-mortem on what just fell apart. And it's like, you know, good for you, but I want to know about the race, you know, not about your day.
And I'd like to actually see something different in a race report. You know, either you know, you turn it into a story, or you know, you bring in some things that make it an interesting read, other than, like you said, well, I went out for the swim, I didn't like it, I got swam over, you know, just the normal, I did this, I finished, and then I went and had tacos, you know.
Yeah.
So also ultra running was something that you picked up. I know running was, like you mentioned, the first thing that you did when you started to kind of get into this fitness mode in your life. And I know that at one point your goal was to maybe work your way up to an annual 10K. Obviously, you far eclipsed that now. When was the first time, though, that you thought that it would be a good idea to run even further than a marathon?
That I can lay at the feet of my college roommate and partner in crime, Frank. He decided to go to a race called the Crooked Road 24-Hour Ultra.
Oof.
And it's more or less a mile loop. And, you know,
Chris, it's your next race.
It's my race.
Yeah. You have 24 hours, and you can make however many loops you want to or you need to. It's up to you.
That is right down Chris's alley, I'm telling you.
Oh, no.
So we showed up, and I decided to see if I could get past the marathon. The first year, I managed to make it about 50K. And the second time, 2 years later, when I went back, I made it to 38 miles. I wanted 40, but it was cold, it was dark, and I was done. But I have to go ahead and make a confession here. My adventures at the Crooked Road 24-Hour start out as a run-walk, and then they become a walk-run. And at some point, it morphs into hiking with a headlamp.
Yeah,
And
very
I don't
true.
know if that's everyone's ultra experience, but that's how I get past 26.2. There's a lot of walking.
That's true of most, though, that I've seen in the ultra community. There are certainly those top 10% pointy end of the age group that are doing 100-mile runs at an 8:10 pace or something, and then there's normal people that,
I've kind of just always thought as ultra marathons as just a really good excuse to eat oatmeal cream pies while you run. But
Yeah, that's one thing about ultras that fascinates me. The aid stations tend to be a buffet. And there's not that many moments that you can be somewhere and see someone running off into the darkness eating a hot dog. It's just different.
That has to be a big difference, though, between the ultra and triathlon communities, especially the on-road triathlon community. For all of our good points, we tend to be kind of persnickety and a little uptight.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, but I think when you look at the off-road triathlon community and the ultra running community, you get a lot more of that grassroots, everybody knows your name type, and just kind of laid back atmosphere. So that's interesting. Does that kind of match, I guess, what your experience has been, kind of dabbling in both?
Yes, very much so. My favorite race every year to do is the Medoc Trail races over near Rocky Mount, North Carolina. I've done the marathon once, and I don't know, I'm on my fourth or fifth 10-miler. And there's just this incredible positive energy, and everybody's laid back and just, there's just not, I guess the best way to say, there's just no tension in the air. Everybody has their own thing that they're trying to do or accomplish there, but nobody's really seems that type A.
I'm with you there. I love the vibe of trail. Of course, I'm more of a mountain bike guy anyway, which I think everybody has kind of figured that out by now. And I noticed you did an article about getting into mountain biking for winter training, which I completely and 100% agree with you that more triathletes should get out there on the mountain bike through the winter. I think it's a great way to improve your cycling power, your bike handling, and all of the things that go into a road bike can be amplified by having some mountain bike skills. But have you done any mountain bike racing? Have you ever tried that sort of thing, or the Xterra side?
Well, last year I decided to change things up again a little bit, and I did a race called the Winter Challenge. And I can't remember the exact distances, but it's about, say, a 2-mile kayak in a lake. Well, excuse me. First, step one, you run 7.5 miles. Then you kayak, I think, 2 miles in a lake. You have to make 3 circuits. And then you mountain bike, and I think it was 10 or 12 miles. And it was a real fish out of water story, if I may borrow that metaphor. I mean, the trail run, that was down home. That's what I enjoyed doing the most. But the kayak, particularly in the tight places, it got a little bumper boats there. And the only reason I completed that third lap, I think, was because if I hadn't, I would have had to admit that I actually gave up on something. And then I went out on the mountain bike, and I realized that my mountain bike skills are not everything they need to be. So it was a great time, a great adventure. I did it with 2 wonderful friends, and I'm hoping to do it again some year, but I'm going to wait until I get a better kayak.
Is that approach one that you tend to carry through races to get through longer stuff, just plain old stubbornness? Is that your secret weapon?
That, I think, primarily is my secret weapon. When I did Augusta 2 years ago, it was like 97 when I hit the run course. And I was Cadillacing along, doing, I think, about 12.5-minute miles through like mile 7. And then it all went in the floor and turned into a walk right on me. And the last 3 miles were particularly hard. I saw one guy stop and waved down a golf cart and say he needed to turn in his chip at like mile 9. I saw one woman drop running beside me. And I made it through the last 3 miles by basically jogging to a phone pole, then walking to a phone pole, and repeating until I actually saw the finish chute. And what I say about that race, a guy there in Tennessee, Super Dave, he did a lot of trail running with me out at Panther Creek State Park, and he nicknamed me Diesel Truck because I'm not fast, but I can go any distance.
Right.
Okay.
I love that.
The way I describe that race is the diesel truck broke down, but the wall of stubborn never cracked.
Gotcha. I can feel you on the diesel side of things. I'm getting a little more speed as I continue to race shorter distances, but I've always kind of been that same way. You know, you keep going, and you know, eventually you just get to the point where you just bowl along, and you know you're going to get there. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take you. One thing I've got to look at in one of your articles, and this kind of goes back a little bit to trail running, but that you mentioned. Well, we all have to poop. Let's be real about it.
We do.
We all poop. It's just a part of life. And occasionally, when you're in the woods, you just have to poop in the woods. And I noticed that one of your points was about picking the right leaf. And is there a particular type of leaf that you're fond of? Should you poop in the woods? That you would advise?
He's asking for a friend, of course.
For a friend, of course.
Well, you know, basically, I just try and go with, pretty much, you know, oak's good, you know, certainly that would probably be my number one choice. You just want to avoid anything that might be in any way analogous to poison ivy or looks like poison ivy, because you're going to regret that if you make that mistake. I'm just putting it out there.
That's a one-time mistake.
Anything with 3 leaves, might want to just kind of ignore that one.
Yeah, just skip that one. But interestingly enough, you know, I put that out there. I put it in a couple Facebook groups, and one lady actually put in a snapshot of what she felt was the perfect plant and plant leaf to use, and that just goes to show something that I've felt for a long time, which is no matter how extreme you think something is, there's someone out there on the cutting edge who's leaving you behind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love it.
Oh, my goodness. Like I mentioned, we also saw an article on there recently quoting Lana Burrell, who's a co-host on this show most weeks. She is actually soaking up the sunshine in Southern California right now. So since it's going to flurry here tomorrow, we really hate her at the moment. But she was talking about the topic of that article, fitting training into life. She's obviously got a crazy busy schedule, as do many triathletes. She was one of several people you quoted for that article. Obviously, that's something that a lot of people ask, but just curious yourself, obviously working a full-time job and writing a blog and doing all these different races, what does your approach look like to fitting in training and maintaining that balance?
Well, you know, I say in my blog many times that I'm not good at balance and I'm not good at lines. You know, a friend of mine once told me there was a fine line between one type of behavior and another type of behavior, and I had to tell him, look, dude, I'm not good with lines, much less fine lines. Mm-hmm. I just try and fit it into my daily life, and I just try and not sweat the days that I just can't get the workout in. But, you know, mostly, you know, 4 days a week, I'll do 2 workouts. Like I'll lift weights and I'll swim. I'll run and hit the bike trainer. On weekends, I do long ride and long run. And I just try and make it work. And sometimes you just don't get the whole workout, and sometimes there's weeks you miss a couple workouts. But the important thing is, you know, just to have your priorities sorted out. You got to show up for work, you got to be there for your family, and you got to train when you can. And that's it, just that, and go out and race. And like I said, laugh at yourself.
Absolutely. Well, and it comes down to not overthinking it and not taking it too seriously. That's something that I think a lot of us can be guilty of from time to time. Also, I know as a physical therapy assistant, obviously you are mindful of probably your own form and physical core strength and all that good stuff. What are some things that you see triathletes really not being that great at, form-wise or conditioning-wise, that you would like to see them improve?
Well, triathlon is its own thing, and that's one of the reasons I'm in it, and one of the reasons I think that I write so much about it, because, we're just energetic little critters, and we don't swim well, and we don't bike handle all that well, and sometimes we don't run that well. The thing that I kind of think about sometimes is running form. You've got to take that seriously, and you've got to work on it. Running form and running cadence are something I think a lot of people are missing. I think it makes a world of difference, particularly when you do the run as the final leg of a race. Swimming is all about form, and I'm working with a swim coach now, completely revamping my swim. And it's already paying dividends. I think that's the place where I'm going to pick up the most bang for my buck. And I'm getting ready to change up how I do bike training as well, because I am legendarily slow on the bike, and I'm looking for that path forward.
That's the way to do it, and I know I would definitely agree on the swim side of things, especially just for the free speed that you may be missing out on, because it is so much more a finesse and artful thing than it is a brute strength thing. And I think a lot of us that might be halfway decent at running or biking tend to approach swimming the same way, of being kind of a muscle over all else thing, and that's not how it's done.
That's one of the big lessons I've had to learn in triathlon. I'm a big guy, and I'm physically powerful, and in a lot of situations and in a lot of things, I just try and muscle through, because that works for me most of the time in most things. But it's not that helpful in triathlon. You've really got to spin those cranks. You've really got to have a good run cadence and just and just work on that turnover. And on the swim, you've got to have that swim balance. You are never going to overpower the water in that pool, that lake, or that ocean.
Goodness knows we've tried.
Yeah,
we have tried.
It's a very hard thing to wrap your head around, especially for those of us that are adult onset swimmers. That it kind of goes against everything that we've always done. If you've been into cycling or running, it's always about power and how much power can you put down for how long. And swim's kind of the exact opposite. It almost seems like the harder you work, the slower you end up going. It's when you're really able to relax and just kind of feel the flow through the water that you pick up a lot more speed.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you've done quite a few different types of races, obviously in both ultra and triathlon, also those different formats that you've experimented with, on-road, off-road. It sounds like variety is something that you really kind of appreciate. What are some races or maybe formats you'd like to try in the future that you kind of have on your radar?
Well, the one I've heard about recently that interests me a great deal. I understand some triathlons are now having a gravel portion where people will ride a gravel or a cyclocross bike, and that sounds really interesting to me. I would like to try that. I'd like to do an off-road try that has a swim instead of a kayak. Because me and a kayak, it really is a fish out of water story, but I wouldn't mind going back and revisiting that some as well. And, there's all kinds of races and opportunities out there to look into. There's a lot of cycling that, as I get to be a better cyclist, that I think I'm going to try. I'm not sure I'm volunteering myself for assault on Mount Mitchell just yet, but there's a lot of rides out there that are a bit less intense that I would like to maybe take a swing at.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you mentioned the gravel triathlon. I think that would be just amazing fun. I love riding gravel. That's one thing I picked up a few years back was as for winter training. Because it's, again, bike handling and things like we were talking about with the mountain bike, but more on that cyclocross bike, you're more in a road bike type position, so it can translate in some ways a little bit better to to road bike performance and whatnot. But I like that idea for a gravel try. That could be fun.
Yeah, I'd I'm looking, and I need to develop a lot better bike handling on the mountain bike. But I would like to do a mountain bike race or two, just to try that out. I just got to find time to get a little bit more skillful with the mountain bike.
Yeah, definitely. There's some really, really good mountain bike racing around here, and actually, there's a new the Dirty Bird Events guys are doing a endurance race at Panther Creek later this year. Also, they're doing, I think, a 4-hour, and an 8-hour at Panther. So
cool.
Lots of opportunities. I know you mentioned Augusta later on this year. What other races are on your 2018 calendar?
The rest of my races are pretty much local. I'm probably going to do the local St. Patty's 5K. There's a run in Hartwell called the 10K Dam Run. There's an Olympic, the Hartwell YMCA Olympic is on my radar. I'm most likely going to do the Greenville Triathlon again this year. Last year I cut 15 minutes off my time from 2 years ago. I'd like to see if I can carve another 2 or 3 there. And Augusta, and then the end of my season will most likely be the Medoc Trail Races 10-miler.
Nice. It seems like a recurring theme right there. So nice full season, it sounds like, on tap for you, and plenty to come up in the blog as well, as we've mentioned, working on some new stuff for there. Anything in particular, as I know you mentioned you're in the middle of the new triathlete series right now, so that will wrap up just in time for triathlon season here, I'm guessing. And but any other upcoming things that you can tease right now, or is it kind of all super secret?
Well, not really. What I'm trying to do is I am just trying to look at the parts of triathlon and trail running where there are obstacles and issues that everyone faces, and write about that, because I think that's the best way that I can really be helpful to my audience. And just because I don't have enough going on, I've started work on a mystery novel.
Nice.
Working title is Spin Me Deadly.
Okay.
Psycho-related?
It's basically I've decided to try and do a series of novels around bicycling the way Dick Francis did around horse racing.
Interesting.
And so this one's going to be primarily about road biking. Maybe there'll be a future one that involves cyclocross or triathlon. But I just was thinking, bicycles are a big part of my world. So I thought I would take a stab at that. I would describe myself as a quarter of the way through it, and I'm hoping to finish it this year. Again, because I didn't have enough going on.
Right, exactly.
Right. Yeah, I'll look forward to looking for that. That sounds...
Add another thing to the plate, but busy. Give something to a busy person if you want it done, and it sounds like you've got plenty on tap. The website, once again, is SwimBikeStumble.com. We'll be sure to link that up in the show notes. I see you're obviously on social media. Follow you there. Facebook and Twitter. Anywhere else that you're online, or are those the two?
Facebook, Twitter. I have a Facebook fan page for SwimBikeStumble, and that's pretty much my social media presence at the moment.
Nice, and that's linked from the website as well, and we'll post the links up in the show notes. And Al Dockery, this was a lot of fun. Best of luck with your 2018 season. Look forward to seeing the upcoming stuff on the blogs, and wishing you all the best in the new year.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Derek, and I hope to see you guys out there somewhere.
Sounds good. Cheers, man. Have a good one.
Remember to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, the TuneIn Radio app. Also available for listening at the website, LostTransition.com, Facebook, and Twitter. Catch us there for our social media updates. Let us know what you'd like to hear on some upcoming shows. We've got a show coming up in the next week or so about individual race planning. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, by all means, contact us via the website, Facebook, or Twitter, and let us know what we can do to help you. We've also got author Susan Lakey coming up here in a couple weeks, and another roundtable scheduled toward the end of March, beginning of April, and lining up some guests for other shows coming up as we kick off the 2018 triathlon season. We'll talk to you again soon. Until next time, may all your transitions be smooth.